In 1993, after the massive success of the original Mortal Kombat, came the game that would come to define the series, Mortal Kombat 2. The game improved pretty much everything and started to set itself apart as its own unique take on the fighting game genre and not just another Street Fighter 2 clone. Presentation remains Mortal Kombat 2's strong point with a whole new aesthetic that really sets it apart from its predecessor. One look at the title screen and the track mode and you know shit just got real. The stages are very different from Mortal Kombat 1's realistic arena settings, featuring more surreal imagery and foreign designs. Everything looked unfamiliar and that helped make it stand out and made them the iconic stages they are today. The music is also really good and it fits the tone and atmosphere really well. I had a problem with the initial set of combatants, noting that they felt very bland to me. Mortal Kombat 2 on the other hand has a really good roster ignoring the palette swaps. Newcomers Kung Lao, Jax, and Baraka are badass new additions along with the ability to play as Reptile, the secret warrior from the first game, and Shang Tsung, the guy that made you hate old people from MK1. Except he's young because no one wants to play that old geezer. Kitana and Mileena are okay design wise, but they have pretty cool moves. The returning cast is also way more fleshed out and they seem to have more of a personality. I don't really mind the palette swap characters by this point because their moves started defining them. It really reminds me of how Ken in Street Fighter 2 had the same moves as Ryu, but later got fire added to his Shoryuken, something that would be uniquely his and would go on to define his characters even to this day. Controls are essentially the same as MK1. Every character has the same basic normals with one unique close standing normal. There are still 5 buttons, low punch, low kick, high kick, and block, and they function nearly identical to MK1. The game does feel very familiar, but the controls are a lot tighter. The game has a better juggling system, pretty much due to the new moves everyone has. The system is still pretty limited, usually leading to simple jump kick to projectile combos. The gameplay is very similar to its predecessor, with a couple of normals being changed or added, but it feels faster and it controls a lot better. The new moves given to the roster are actually pretty badass. The moves are more unique and interesting, which adds to the presentation of the game. Everyone also has 2 fatalities instead of 1, meaning Liu Kang has the stupid uppercut from MK1 and the new Dragon Morph fatality. This has to be one of my favorite fatalities in the series and is an example of how characters in Mortal Kombat 2 are cooler than their initial outing. Liu Kang as a character design is pretty boring, even though they did make him a little bit better in the sequel, but his added moves and fatalities are what make him iconic. There are also other special finishers in this game in the form of babalities and friendships on top of your standard fatalities. Babalities turn your opponent into a crying baby, and friendships will make your character do something nice, thus sparing them of the gruesome death they would have had to endure. To do either of these special finishers, you had to only use kicks in the winning round. We wouldn't see babalities redone until 2011's Mortal Kombat reboot, and friendships have yet to return from Mortal Kombat 3. With how awesome babalities in MK reboot were, I would love to see reimagined friendships. Gameplay wise, that's pretty much it, but we still have to talk about arcade mode. I didn't really go in depth with my Mortal Kombat 1 review because I was kind of rushing to make it and I really regret doing so I wanted to remedy that here. In Mortal Kombat 1 you had a standard ladder with 2 endurance matches. The then non-playable Shang Tsung as a final boss and Goro as a mini-boss. There was also a secret boss named Reptile, which was kinda convoluted to get to, but he was the green palette swap ninja that is playable in Mortal Kombat 2, and he was fairly difficult to access, requiring a double flawless victory without blocking on the pit stage if a silhouette passes in front of the moon. And then you get your ass handed to you and you regret even trying. In Mortal Kombat 2, arcade mode is virtually the same, just with different characters and the lack of endurance matches. It's also harder, but extremely satisfying when you out-bullshit the CPU. Everyone has unique AI, which means some characters are aggressive as all hell, and they read all your inputs, while others are kind of easy. Once you get past the question block, which I'll get to in a bit, you fight Kintaro, who is similar to Goro except he's harder. He will destroy you if you're not ready, but he's not impossible to beat. You have to come up with a strategy that doesn't really work all the time, as the fight is very luck based, dependent on Kintaro's AI, and it also requires some pretty good reactions. He's not impossible, but he is a pain in the ass. Shao Kahn, the game's final boss, isn't as hard, but he will give you a tough time if you're not careful, and certain strategies will work better against him than they would against Kintaro. Now Shao Kahn and Kintaro are not the hardest characters you can face. That question block you see on the arcade ladder houses Jade, a female green ninja who is pretty difficult and is accessed by beating the previous opponent in the ladder with just light kick. There are 2 other boss characters, Smoke and Noob Saibot, with Noob being one of the hardest bosses in MK history. Smoke is fought by fighting in the portal stage and by pressing down and start when you see Dan Forden yelling Toasty. He pops up randomly when you do an uppercut. Fighting Noob is easier, requiring 50 wins in a row in versus, which you can easily boost. Mortal Kombat 2 is an excellent sequel. Mortal Kombat 1 had a good foundation and MK2 really built upon it. The game was actually fun to go back and play with its improved gameplay. The music is fantastic and the art direction is top notch, which I really appreciate. Characters were actually interesting, their moves were awesome and satisfying to pull off, and the new finishers were actually really awesome without being too over the top like Mortal Kombat 3. Arcade mode was hard without making you feel too frustrated, and it was satisfying to overcome the challenge. Mortal Kombat 2 is a classic and it really put Mortal Kombat on the map as a legit part of the fighting game genre. Is it perfect? No, but it was enough of an upgrade to make it the high tier game it is today. Thank you for watching my review on Mortal Kombat 2, and I'll be back with a review on Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 soon. I'll touch on a couple of the differences from vanilla Mortal Kombat 3 in that review, as they're pretty much the same game but technically very different. But for now, leave any feedback down below and mash the like and sub buttons, and stay godlike fighting game fans.